everyone, welcome to the session Programming for Problem Solving. Myself Navya. I'm an assistant professor from the Department of CSIT in MLR Institutions of Technology. In today's session, we are going to see what are function prototypes. So in the last session, we have seen what are the function, what is meant by function, and what are different aspects of functions, and what are the types of functions, and what are the advantages of functions. Here we will see specifically the user defined functions, how you can create your own user defined functions. So there are four parameters, four prototypes in functions. So the first one is function without parameters and without return type, functions with parameters and without return type, functions without parameters and with return type, and functions without parameters, with parameters and with return type. So these are the four functions we are going to see in this session. So coming to the types of function prototypes. So based on the data flow between the calling function and called functions, the functions are classified as follows. I already said you functions with parameters and with return type, functions without parameters and without return type, functions with parameters and without return type, functions without parameters and with return types. So there are four types of prototypes. Coming to the first one, functions with parameters and with return type. As we have seen in the last session, so how you are writing a function, so you will write a return type, function name, followed by parameters, and so on. You will write this, it will go with a specific task. So first one is functions with parameters as well as return type. If a function having the return type as well as parameters, how it would be happen? So simply we'll go with the definition. In this type of function, there is a data transfer from calling function to called function and also called function to calling function. So the execution control jumps from calling function to called functions along with the parameters and execute that particular function, and finally come back to the calling function along with the return type. So let us go with a simple example program. Okay, so as we discussed in the last class, the same thing we will have the return type as well as we are passing parameters. This comes under function with return type and with the parameters. So here what happens, I'm writing the program with, I'm taking the two values as input and I'm sending the parameters from calling function to called function. When it reaches the called function, it was returning the value, right? It was returning the value too. So it is functions with parameters and with return type. Next, coming to functions with parameters and without return type. If I'm transferring the data from calling function to called function, which is parameters, if I'm passing parameters from calling function to called function, but there is no data transfer from the called function to calling function back. If I'm not returning any value from the function, it is said to be functions with parameters and without return type. Let us go with a small example program. See here, if I go with the same example, I'm not returning any value here. Okay. So in case if you don't return a value, you has to use void. Okay. So you just have to go with a small function call. That's it. Sum of x comma y. Here from the calling function, you are calling with the parameters to the call function. Called function will receive a and b values at formal parameters, but it won't return any value. This type is called as function with parameters but no return type. Okay, when I execute it, the same thing you will have. If I have 2 and 3, I'll get 3. 2 into 2 is 4, 3 into 3 is 9. which is 13. 4 plus 9 is 13. So this is one of the type. Let me go to the next type of function, the functions without parameters and with return type. Here is this functions without return type and without parameters. We are not passing any parameters to the called function, but we can have the values from the parameters. So here is the program. We'll have let us like in this type of function, no data transfer from calling function to called functions, but there is a data transfer from called function to calling function, reverse. So the execution control jumps to the calling function, to the called function, and executes called function, and finally comes back to the calling function along with the return value. So we will have a small example program which will have a same, but I'll go with int a comma b here. Okay, and I'll go a and b values here itself. Hope it will come. A b. So it will return value int and it won't have any parameters here. So I'm not sending any parameters here. I just printing the values here. Okay, I'll go with printf %d comma sum. So this is the case. So when I execute this, the same 2 and 3. So I'm getting 0. I have to read the values here. Okay. I'll go this statement here. So that I'll get the values 2 and 3. So I'll get the values here. So I'm not taking any values. I'm not sending the values to the sum function, but it will sum will return some value here. So after a certain kind of task. So this is what the function without parameters, but it was returning something. And the last case is functions without parameters and return type. So a function has no data transfer from calling function to call function, no data transfer from called function to calling function also. Simply when the control jumps with no data and it will return nothing. So let us go with a small example program here. See here, I has written the program here, the same. So we'll have the same program also. I'm not returning any value. Simply we will write the printf statement here. Okay. So I'm not taking any value here. I'm not having any value here. I just simply simply calling the sum function such that int a comma b, I'm reading the values in that function only, and I'm calculating the function only. Just I'm calling from the main function. So if I go with the values, it will return you the same values. 2 and 3, 2 square 4 plus 3 square 9, 13. So this is how the 4 types of prototypes. So here when it comes to this particular, this is called as function declaration, and we are calling the function main function here. And the main function, whenever you are having the function call, the control will jumps to the called function and it will perform all the operations here. It was reading two numbers and it was adding two numbers, and then after completion of this program it will come back to the calling function and it will end up here. So there is no parameter passing, data transfer is not happening from calling function to called function. Similarly, I am not responding any calling function to called function. So here it will perform this particular task and it will come out of that particular function. So this is all about types of function prototypes. In coming to prototypes, in this session we have seen there are four types of function prototypes are there. Function with it will have functions divided into two with parameters, without parameters. With parameters, with return type, with parameters, without return type. Similarly, without parameters also, with return type and without return type. So we have seen all the example program for this. So return type with parameters means you are transferring data transfer from calling function to called functions. Return type means you are transferring data from called function to calling function back. We have seen the example programs regarding this also. So this is all about this session. We have seen the function prototype also, how the function prototype will be there. You will have the return type, function name, followed by parameters. You can pass any number of parameters here. Function name is name of the function that should follow as a variable. After completion of the task, if you are returning some value, what type of data you are returning back to the called function, here you have to give data type of return value. This is all about today's session. Thank you everyone.